Hey everybody, some gadget guy here. The intro on Google Hangouts still weirds me out because I have no idea when we're actually really live. But I wanted to this weekend, while most of my friends are down at Comic-Con, wanted to chat a little politics, because that's always a really calm and well mannered discussion topic whenever you throw politics on the internet. One of the stories that came out recently this week was something that I got really worked up about. I wrote up an article on somegadgetguy.com and got into a pretty decent little Twitter argument with a couple folks who viscerally disagreed with my stance on it. So I kind of wanted to take it live and just see what my audience sort of thinks of the situation, especially as we're getting into some midterm elections and what people are thinking about when they're shopping things like broadband internet. And that's actually the topic that we're going to be talking about is the FCC. It was announced this week that a actually, let me pull it up so I can read it directly here. It was announced this week that Representative Marsha Blackburn introduced an amendment to the 2015 Financial Services Appropriations Bill, which basically limits the powers of the FCC in aiding cities and municipalities from circumventing state law in doing things like building out high-speed data. So Tom Wheeler, the FCC chairman, a little while back, said that he believed the FCC did have the authority to help cities circumvent state law. That if a city petitioned the FCC, that the FCC had the authority to help them go into that area and do things like roll out their own fiber internet or expand current fiber internet offerings if state laws said that actions like that were illegal. And this is a really frustrating time in the United States because of how non-competitive we are on the world scene for having invented the internet. And if you listen to many Americans, we invented the internet. How we're now sort of neck and neck with countries like Estonia in terms of broadband speeds and broadband adoption, and that we can't even really agree on what the definition of broadband is, as it was only up until a couple years ago that even 768K DSL could still sometimes be considered broadband depending on what definition we were using. And we would hope that over time we would see these systems improve, these networks get faster, and with more penetration and with more rollout, services should get cheaper. I mean, it's not like we pay the same insane rates for long distance telephone calls anymore, because the world has sort of reached a saturation point on what we can do with landline telephones. And eventually we would hope that the same thing would happen with data networks. Unfortunately, we're seeing sort of the effects of these gentleman agreements and legislation which sort of prevent competition from happening in many areas. And in many areas of the United States, it's rare that you have two competitors of the same type of technology. So if you had a cable internet, that you would have multiple offerings for cable internet. In my area, we have one. We've got Time Warner. And they say that because there's also a DSL offering, which is literally 1/10 the speed of cable, that's enough for competition. So a 3 megabit DSL service is plenty fine for competition. If I decide that I want to leave Time Warner's 50 megs internet and go get that instead, then that's competition enough for me, and I should just be happy with it. And especially as we're watching many of these companies sort of curtail their investments in their networks as well. So not only are we seeing a lack of competition, that lack of competition has enabled them to spend less on improving their networks and rolling out their networks. There was a story from the Washington Post. If you Google, ISPs are spending less on their networks as they make more money off of them. We're seeing that the actual percentage of revenue that companies are investing, the capital expenditures per percentage of revenue, are now floating around 10% for Time Warner, Comcast, and Verizon. Now, in recent years, we've actually seen AT&T step up as they've been pushing their UVerse solutions to more areas. Like, they've been expanding UVerse, but oftentimes that expenditure is to get UVerse caught up to some of the offerings that Time Warner and Comcast are already providing in that area. And again, we're still seeing those effects of certain pieces of legislation at the city and state level, which prevent UVers from actually expanding more or expanding faster. But AT&T has actually been spending more money on their investment in infrastructure and network, but that's still not had a profound effect on the situation countrywide. Really, what we've seen time and time again is the only motivating factor for pricing and for improvement of service has been competition. And in any area where we have multiple companies competing, we actually see better service. We actually see better customer service, because you don't want to lose a customer just because someone was cranky on the phone one day. And we see pricing actually start fighting. We see fights for what a service actually costs, and we can point to areas where Google Fiber has rolled into an area, and all of a sudden we see companies like AT&T, Comcast, Time Warner suddenly become a lot more interested in fighting for their customers. I think Austin is a perfect example. Yeah, AT&T has been doing a wonderful job in trying to push UVers out there, but we probably wouldn't have seen as big a push for fiber from AT&T had Google Fiber not rolled into Austin. And so that is one of those motivating forces. And so when a community of people come together and they say, hey, we're being really underserved by the major companies, and we want to put our tax dollars into an infrastructure locally so that we have competitive offerings, so that our kids have better educational resources, so that our hospitals have better access to data, so that our businesses can be more competitive on the global scene. We also now see the number of states that have engaged in legislation preventing those cities and municipalities from doing that. And so I think it's highly ironic. So Representative Marsha Blackburn was the House member who wrote up, or I forget, proposed this amendment to this financial bill, and she comes from Tennessee. She's a Republican out of Tennessee, and in Tennessee we have a wonderful example of what community-funded high-speed internet can look like in Chattanooga. And I would definitely recommend, if you haven't read up on Chattanooga's fiber internet offerings, to go and check it out, because it's kind of an awesome little story. And this community got together and they said, hey, we want to offer up high-speed internet. And so 5 years ago, they got it off the ground, and it was 100 megabit data going up against Verizon at the time, because Verizon was still rolling out Fios, which was only offering 50 meg internet. And in that 5 years, they even beat Google Fiber to the punch with gigabit internet. And so through raising tax dollars for the service, and then they also reached out to the Department of Energy. And this is what I think is crucially interesting about Chattanooga as a story. It's not just about data. So they reached out to the Department of Energy, and as they were rolling out this new fiber internet, it also allowed them to start laying the backbone of what could become a smarter energy grid. United States electrical infrastructure is old and decrepit. And there have been numerous stories where, like, if terrorists wanted to, they could attack 5 points in the United States and completely cripple the grid for years. And I don't think it's that dire. It's probably close, but it's not that dire. That as we're doing things like rolling out fiber, it allows us to build in smarter tools for how we use and manage and utilize electricity, which is pretty vital to the well-being of any first world nation. The Department of Energy threw them a $100 million grant. So through raising some tax dollar funds and $100 million, I mean, we're talking about, when Time Warner and Comcast are talking about network improvements and the billions of dollars that they spend on network and infrastructure, one city was able to get it done by raising tax dollars and absorbing $100 million into their project, into this project. And now they stand as one of the few cities which could be a template for how we can better manage data and better manage electricity. And the residents of Chattanooga now have an offering where they can get gigabit duplex internet, so 1,000 megabits up and 1,000 megabits down for $80 a month. So especially if you're in the United States, and I want you to do the math on your bill, because it's pretty close to what I pay here in Time Warner, with Time Warner here in California, and I have 1/20th the download speed. I've got that 50 megs internet. Ooh, 50 megs. And I've got a 5 megabit upload. So that's 1/200th the theoretical maximum speed of what Chattanooga residents have for the same price. And so, especially as we're all wanting to be, really savvy consumers and shop smarter, and you're like, well, I want that. But of course, I have zero competition. And if I ever decide I want to leave Time Warner, the only other competition I have is, like I said, 3 megabit DSL. So I'm stuck. I am proper stuck. It's really frustrating in that this further rollout could be also solving some of our energy problems and having a smarter grid to move energy back and forth. But again, that's the frustrating aspect of how money and politics have sort of shaped the debate on what we should be allowed to do at the municipal, city, state, local levels, and then how the federal government is going to work within that system as well. And knowing that when we see lawmakers at the state and city level drafting legislation against things like municipal broadband, then we look at what companies are donating to those politicians. It's really sad to think that it's thousands and thousands of dollars to get sweetheart legislation, which benefits these major corporations like Time Warner and Comcast to the tune of millions and billions. I mean, that's how little money they have to spend in lobbying efforts to make sure that they've got a lock on a city or on a whole state to prevent this type of competition. And I'm at heart, I'm a capitalist, and I really do believe in free market, but that's sort of a rigged system. I really do believe we should be able to profit and make money, and businesses should have the ability to go and do things. And a business's main reason for being is to generate profit. So I understand, this is a part of it. Now they've found a way to get into the lobbying game, and to such a degree that they can prevent the need to spend money on infrastructure to compete, which that's frustrating. But that also means that it's much more difficult for another company or another system to come in and sort of upset that apple cart. That's what I think is also sort of great about the American system, is we should be able to find disruption. Disruption is vital to the health of the United States. It's sort of what we've built our entire culture and identity off of, is the ability to shake things up a bit. But no, we currently have 20 states in the United States with laws on the books that prevent municipal broadband, or make it just unfeasible for these efforts to expand. And that's frustrating, because the flip side of that argument is we now see other areas and other communities engaging in really, really severe sweetheart deals for companies like Google. So to roll out Google Fiber, they're getting preferential treatment for zoning. They're getting fast deals pushed through, which in the long term might not necessarily be good for that city or that state or that municipality either. We don't know what the full ramifications on widespread Google Fiber adoption will be if we're cutting all of these really preferential deals for one company at the expense of other companies which might be able to come up and compete as well. And so that makes me a little nervous, even though ultimately I'm a fan of competition. It makes me a little nervous when we see the only thing to compete is a full pendulum swing to the complete opposite direction, where states sort of give up their rights to allow another company to come in and cut fiber. So, but then that's the situation that we're in. We're so starved for competition that we're potentially making equally bad decisions on the opposite side of the coin as well. So this leaves us in a terrifically odd position. If you're a states' rights advocate, ultimately you would say, well, the state voted to say, residents of Chattanooga, that's great that you've got fiber, but we don't believe anyone else should be allowed to roll out fiber in the same way, and we don't believe that Chattanooga fiber should ever be allowed to expand from Chattanooga. So the rest of Tennessee just has no option for having that kind of system, and we say so because we're the state lawmakers, and that's what we've decided, completely independently of any other lobbying efforts, I'm sure, or consultants from other companies who might have a vested interest in providing those types of solutions without having to pay a lot of money for those solutions because they're not investing a lot of money into their infrastructure anymore. So that's what we've decided. So that means that the only other agency or the only other political entity capable of walking into that situation to help provide some kind of leverage is at the federal side. So if we're a states' rights advocate, we should say that, oh, the federal government should stay out of the business affairs at the state and local level. But it's almost like we need some sort of, not just states' rights, but city rights, municipal rights, township rights for all of those smaller people who don't have these options. I mean, we want to believe in free market, but if we put all of our eggs in free market, then we have to acknowledge that there is very little financial incentive for a Time Warner or Comcast to go to rural farmland and lay out high-speed data for farmers. It's just not economically feasible for them. They don't have the population density to make up the investment in rolling out high-speed services to people that live miles apart. So those farmers, as a collective, should be able to get together and say, well, they can't do it for us. So what if we paid into our own system and had it managed by the electric company in our area? And that way the electric company also has a data network and a framework to provide us better electricity. Maybe that will eventually lower our rates on electricity because we'll be using it more efficiently. Maybe that's what we want to invest our own tax dollars into, and then later, if they decide to sell off a part of their interest in that system, then a Time Warner could just roll in and manage the fiber network, and they didn't have to invest any of their capital in it, but they get to profit off of it. And that's happened in a number of areas as well, where the state has an interest in rolling out and digging up fiber for the benefit of companies that get to then manage it, just sort of sit on top of it, and that's sort of an equally amenable deal for a lot of people and companies involved. But they're not allowed to because their state officials said, no, we can't have that because because we've decided, not Time Warner, that we should not have government interfering with the affairs of private sector business, and that's socialism. And we sort of have a non-argument. So it's almost like we need an agency that can protect city rights and municipality rights and township rights against the larger state interests, just as we have sort of this conversation about protecting states' rights against the federal government. It's really hard for me to be objective in this conversation because ultimately all I want is more competition. I want to be able to go to Time Warner and say, you know what, I'm going to leave, and be able to mean it if I don't like how they do business or I don't like how they treat me as a customer. And I can't do that. So that makes me really cranky. And that puts me in the camp of potentially wanting to offer up ridiculous sweetheart deals to any company that can roll in and give me some kind of competition. I'm at the point where I'm willing to pay more for the same type of service just so I can tell Time Warner I'll leave if they do something that I don't like. And that's the position that I'm in. And that's the position that many Americans are in. And there are a number of people in this country who don't even have the potential to leave cable for a DSL provider, or maybe all they have are DSL, this one entity that's the only way that they can get online. And that's a horrible situation to be in when we're talking about being a 21st century country with their kids not having access to premium tools and data services and hospitals and businesses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I really want to hear your thoughts on this matter. I'm a little torn on it because this is one of those areas. I mean, if you haven't noticed, I'm kind of a liberal, but this is one of those areas where I get kind of spiky and libertarian, where I kind of feel like if a community of people get together and say, hey, this is what we want to do and we voted on it, they should be allowed to do it. So I want to hear your thoughts. Drop me some comments down below because this is a really dicey situation and this is a really spiky conversation. I've gotten into some really heated and passionate debates so far with people who violently disagree with me. And so I would like to reiterate that I do not approve comments on my YouTube channel, but I will banhammer people that are disrespectful. So if you're only commenting to be a douchewad on this video, I will erase your comment and ban you from my channel. So we've gotten into some really amazing and heated discussions, but we're going to be civil when talking about this subject. As always, folks, thanks so much for watching my videos, sharing my videos, subscribing to my channel, dropping me all of those amazing comments, because I definitely want to hear from you what you think about this matter. Should a federal agency be able to help a smaller community at the local level circumvent state law? It's a fascinating idea. It's so meta and it's so twisted. I'd love to hear what you think. As always, folks, thanks for watching. Hit that thumbs up button. I always appreciate it, and I will catch you all on the next video.